Urgent! Nuclear panic in the Kremlin. Britain and France are secretly transferring an atomic bomb to Ukraine. Howling in Moscow. Russian intelligence claims French warheads are being supplied. Primal fear among Russians. A missile flew as far as Udmurtia. But what if it had a nuclear warhead? Medvedev, in a fit of hysteria, threatens strikes on Europe, while Putin whines about rule violations. A deadly blow from Britain. London imposes historic sanctions and destroys Transneft and the Shadow Fleet. All the details of the total shock and hysteria in Moscow. Watch right now. My respects, this is Ukraine Today. I am Andriy Silikov. Let's discuss the latest news. Nuclear panic in the Kremlin. A European bomb for Kyiv. There is an outcry in Moscow. Russian intelligence has issued a panic-stricken report. Britain and France are secretly preparing to transfer nuclear weapons to Ukraine. The SVR is whining that the Allies will disguise this as a Ukrainian development.
We are talking about the covert transfer to Ukraine of European components, equipment, and technologies in this field. One option being considered is the French compact warhead TN75 from the M51.1 submarine-launched ballistic missile.
Putin and Medvedev are in a frenzy. The news has caused panic among the elites. At the FSB board meeting, Putin stated that the West does not shy away from any means. Peskov is stammering about violations. But Medvedev lost it the most. He flew into a rage and is now threatening nuclear strikes across all of Europe. Meanwhile, the frightened Russian senators are frantically writing pathetic complaints to international bodies.
There can be no shadow of a doubt that if events develop this way, Russia will have to use any means, including non-strategic nuclear weapons, against targets in Ukraine that pose a threat to our country and, if necessary, against supplier countries, who thereby become accomplices in a nuclear conflict with Russia.
Kremlin madness or brilliant disguise? Paris has officially exposed Putin's intelligence service. The French called the story about the nuclear bomb a complete lie and a provocation. There are two options here. Either Russia's foreign intelligence service has terminal schizophrenia, or the Allies are masterfully leading Moscow by the nose. Why should the enemy know about real deadly surprises in advance? Let them sit in their bunkers and tremble at every rustle.
The statement you are referring to, regarding the so-called plans to transfer nuclear weapons to Ukraine, is a complete lie and an absolute fabrication. Russians have long known exactly what to think about such baseless provocations, coming from certain government organizations.
400 kilometers of terror. Russia's air defense has been completely breached. While the elites are whining, the propaganda is convulsing. Our missile effortlessly pierced through the vaunted air defense zones, flew 1,400 kilometers and struck factories in Udmurtia. Russian war correspondents, in a state of animal shock, are asking the authorities a terrifying question. What if it had already been a British nuclear shell? They realized the sky is full of holes and nothing will save Moscow.
How did it manage to fly more than 1,400 kilometers over our country, bypassing all the air defense positions? And the last question we were asked from the front today concerns the enemy's strike on Udmurtia. What if the payload of this thing had been nuclear? The same British are ready to do a great deal.
Britain is crushing the economy. The strike of the decade! While Russia is distracted by rumors, London strikes with full force. By the 4th anniversary of the invasion, the most devastating package of sanctions has been imposed. The Kremlin's lifeblood has come under the roller, Transneft, which transports 80% of oil for export. In addition, the British have ruthlessly cut Rosatom subsidiaries, gas companies, and 175 Dubai-based firms out of the global economy.
Today, the United Kingdom has taken decisive measures to halt critical flows of financing, military equipment, and revenues that support Russia's aggression.
Russia's Shadow Fleet is going under. The sanctions noose has tightened completely. The British blocked 48 tankers from Putin's Shadow Fleet in one fell swoop. London's blacklist now includes more than 3,000 Russian individuals and companies. Oil windfall profits have been cut off. The economy is in a vice. There is only one outcome ahead for the Kremlin, a Ukraine armed to the teeth and total collapse. A new powerful enemy for Putin, hysteria over weapons from South Korea. Russia, in a panic, has gained yet another high-tech adversary. As soon as information about Seoul's direct military supplies to the Ukrainian armed forces leaked to the media, the Kremlin had a fit. The result, venomous outbursts and pathetic threats to the Koreans of mythical retribution. Let's break down the details right now.
The statement from the drunkard at the Russian Foreign Ministry is once again in the spotlight. But this is really some kind of freak show. Zakharova moved on to threatening the South Korean side in case Seoul joins the NATO program for financing the purchase of American weapons for the Ukrainian army.
Any possible participation by the Republic of Korea in such deliveries, in any form, direct or indirect, will only push back the prospects for resolving the conflict. In that case, we will be forced to exercise our right to take retaliatory, including asymmetric measures.
Zakharova's jab at South Korea, which in principle, once again, underscores whom they support in this war, is quite logical and aligns with the general propaganda line that exists in the Russian Federation. But at the same time, all these threats sound rather ridiculous because we understand that Russia's capabilities on the international stage are quite limited. In principle, all the resources that Putin has at his disposal have been thrown into the war with Ukraine.
On the eve, South Korean media, citing diplomatic sources, reported that Seoul is considering various options for supporting Kyiv. Among the mechanisms being discussed is the possible participation in the Pearl Initiative, which involves purchasing weapons from the United States for subsequent transfer to the Ukrainian side. At the same time, the South Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs noted that most likely the authorities will limit themselves to purchasing non-lethal equipment.
Ukraine has repeatedly and urgently appealed to the government in Seoul, which currently stands as one of the most significant and influential players in the entire global arms market, with numerous requests for military assistance. However, it has never once received a truly positive response, precisely due to the complex and multifaceted security concerns that have consistently and persistently arisen for the nation of South Korea over the years. So, the latest news about the desire to join the Pearl Initiative is truly, in many ways, revolutionary and unexpected, even though Ukraine and South Korea are, in principle, in the same camp of allies.
Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Seoul has provided Kyiv only with non-lethal and other humanitarian aid. Despite the fact that North Korea has sent thousands of its soldiers to the Kremlin, as well as millions of artillery shells, missiles, and heavy equipment.
Moscow, at every possible opportunity, actively provides support to the brutal and oppressive regime of North Korea, which stands as such a direct and blatant contradiction to all the peaceful initiatives and diplomatic plans that currently exist in the southern part of this peninsula.
And on the eve of the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a large banner appeared on the building of the Russian embassy in Seoul with the inscription in Russian, "Victory will be ours." The South Korean government asked for it to be removed, but the Russian side refused.
Russia is trying by all available means to spread its propaganda and impose narratives that benefit the Kremlin. And this kind of silly kitsch with the banner on the Russian embassy obviously offends the eyes of any civilized tourist or resident of Seoul. So the demand from South Korea is quite logical. Yes, Russia will perceive it as an unfriendly gesture, but at the same time, South Korea itself understands very clearly what stakes Moscow is placing in the region, and all of them naturally exist to benefit Pyongyang.
North Korea is one of the few countries where the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin can travel without fearing arrest. Moscow secured military support from Pyongyang when it realized it would not be able to defeat Ukraine. According to intelligence estimates, around 14,000 North Korean soldiers may have been sent to Russia, a significant number of whom have already been killed. And North Korea continues to supply weapons to Moscow.
The period of instability that we are all experiencing today has a direct impact on the region, which, in principle, appears to be one of the most explosive in the world, probably on par with the Middle East. And because of this very situation, it is increasingly obvious that North Korea, which is currently receiving significant military and economic support from the Russian Federation and maintains quite clear, deep and understandable strategic relations with China, now feels significantly empowered to exert more and more aggressive pressure on its southern neighbors in the region.
North Korea and China are the most significant supporters of Russia's war against Ukraine. They supply Moscow with electronics and technologies for the production of missiles, drones, and tanks, as well as artillery shells. In return, the Kremlin shares technologies with them that allow them to develop their missile and nuclear programs.
China's secret nuclear program. US intelligence is sounding the alarm. Beijing is secretly testing a completely new generation of atomic weapons. China is radically expanding its deadly arsenal, preparing a global threat for the world. What will this secret nuclear arms race lead to? Let's break it down right now.
A new generation of nuclear weapons has been tested in China. In recent years, the country has conducted at least one secret explosive test as part of modernizing its arsenal. CNN reports this. According to sources familiar with US intelligence assessments, investments in the nuclear arsenal are bringing China closer to the status of being equal to Russia and the United States. Moreover, these investments could provide technical capabilities that neither of the two dominant nuclear powers currently possess.
The established system of global nuclear deterrence, which was originally built upon several key Soviet-American agreements to significantly reduce or limit nuclear weapons, has now unfortunately collapsed. This breakdown of diplomatic cooperation marks the end of a long era of strategic stability between the two nations. It has collapsed largely as a result of Russian policy, but also to a great extent because the leadership of the United States is increasingly viewing not Russia, but the People's Republic of China as its main adversary.
In addition, according to sources, China secretly conducted nuclear tests in June 2020. This was despite the moratorium on such activities that has been in place since 1996. Beijing also planned to conduct several more tests in the future. The evidence gathered during the analysis after the June 2020 incident allowed US officials to conclude that the test was motivated by China's pursuit of next-generation nuclear weapons.
This includes efforts to develop additional weapon systems capable of delivering multiple miniaturized nuclear warheads from a single missile.
In addition, China appears to be developing low-yield tactical nuclear weapons, something the country has never produced before. Sources say that these could be used against targets located closer to Chinese territory, including scenarios where Beijing responds to potential US defense of Taiwan.
China is currently making significant strides toward entering the top 3 global powers in terms of its total number of nuclear warheads and advanced strategic nuclear delivery systems. These assets include sophisticated silo-based launchers, long-range ballistic missile submarines, and various types of aircraft that are fully capable of carrying and deploying nuclear weapons.
It is also important to highlight China's own response. In response to questions about the assessments of American intelligence, a representative of the Chinese embassy in Washington said that the United States had distorted and smeared the country's nuclear policy.
The Chinese have no intention of publicizing their nuclear program at all. They are carrying this out quietly, preparing to confront the world with the reality of possible Chinese dominance, nuclear dominance.
As is known, China has possessed a nuclear arsenal since 1964. The country is producing warheads faster than any other nation in the world. Although in terms of size, China's arsenal is significantly smaller than those of Russia and the United States, which still possess the lion's share of the world's nuclear weapons.
And for the Ukrainian armed forces, it's a missile triumph. We strike Russia without the West's permission. A historic breakthrough. Ukrainian and British engineers have forged the deadly Flamingo missile. No more red lines or waiting. Now we are turning enemy rear positions to dust strictly on our own terms. The occupiers should prepare for real hell. We are revealing the details right now.
A Ukrainian missile that today is feared not only by our enemies, but thanks to its accuracy and low production cost is even causing concern among Kyiv's partners. In February 2022, we asked our Western partners to close the airspace over Ukraine. But by February 2026, it is Europe that is asking Ukraine to share its unique experience on how to do this independently.
This is a very simple technology. There's nothing complicated needed here. There are plenty of books written about this, where everything is explained step by step. What's so complicated about it?
As it turns out, modern American and European air defense technologies have a huge drawback: their cost. Even though Western weaponry is technologically unmatched given the current realities of warfare, NATO would only be able to defend against enemy missiles and drones for a few days. The West simply doesn't have enough resources for more than that, since each missile costs tens or even hundreds of times more than the drones it is used to destroy.
Right now, intercepting an Iskander costs over $6 million.
And here Ukraine comes to the West's aid with its unique Flamingo missile.
We want to bring this down to 1 or 1.5 million so that intercepting an Iskander would cost, with
The help of the FP9 missile.
with the help of the FP7 missile.
The Ukrainian Flamingo is already demonstrating unprecedented effectiveness and accuracy, striking strategic targets in Russia. Developed in record time, the missile has become yet another headache for Putin and his generals. Since the development is entirely domestic, the Ukrainian armed forces don't need permission to strike with the Flamingo wherever they want or need to. The only problem our developers have to put up with is scaling up production. So far, it has not been possible to produce a sufficient number of missiles per month for the Ukrainian armed forces.
This is a strategic weapon. Unfortunately, strategic weapons can't be bought or launched today in the same quantities as hotcakes, like FPV drones, so that everyone can see the effect and it reaches every household. But based on the missions that have been carried out so far, we see that it fully meets the objectives we set for it.
For now, there aren't enough domestic missiles to strike all targets on Russian territory, so our Western partners have to help with this as well. For example, the United Kingdom is developing a new deep strike ballistic missile for Ukraine.
We can state that, first and foremost, this is about a missile that can be quickly scaled up and is a relatively inexpensive solution, since the government of the United Kingdom is specifically emphasizing that it should be a cost-effective means, meaning it will meet the demands of the current time. Because we see that the armed forces need a lot of such means and it cannot be too
expensive.
As a result, within the framework of the Nightfall project, Britain announced a competition for the accelerated development of ballistic missiles designed for combat operations under conditions of high threat and strong electromagnetic interference. The modern British missile will be able to launch from various platforms, carry out a series of launches, and leave its position within a matter of minutes. The system will be equipped with a 200-kilogram high explosive warhead, feature high accuracy, and have a range of up to 500 kilometers.
500 kilometers completely covers all the temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine. It also covers a significant portion of the European part of the Russian Federation. And at this depth, the enemy positions both their higher-level headquarters, from brigade up to divisional level, as well as army and group of forces headquarters. These are also quite significant logistical hubs. In other words, these are places where fuel and lubricants, as well as ammunition depots, are concentrated.
In combination with the Ukrainian Flamingo, the British missile can significantly diminish the Kremlin's and personally Putin's desire to continue their campaign. Instead of launching missile strikes on peaceful Ukrainian cities, the bunker dweller will be forced to endlessly defend against Ukrainian armed forces' missiles.
The number and intensity of operations by our security forces using strike drones, including against strategic targets, are wearing down the enemy's air defense forces. And the combination of ballistic weapons and strike drones can deliver targeted strikes against specific enemy assets that are critically important to them.
And it will only get worse from here. Well, at least for the Kremlin. Ukrainian developers promise that by the end of this year, they will reach the necessary supply volumes of ballistic weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine, while simultaneously creating more and more types of advanced weaponry.
In 1 year, that's ballistics. In 2 or 3 years, it's the creation of an anti-ballistic air defense shield over all of
Europe.